A lot of people in power like to have a power dynamic exchange as a kink play because they're so in charge of everything all the time that it's something that they just don't want to be in charge. They want someone to tell them what to do. And so that I have heard, this power exchange. For those of you who have not seen the movie Babygirl with Nicole Kidman, don't listen to this because it's going to be a bit of a spoiler. However, since it is about a woman who ends up in a kinky relationship, I thought it would be appropriate to give you my observations as a sex educator. And I've also been polling my community, a little bit of sexperts, if you will, to get some of their opinions about it. And the overall opinion is really interesting because for the people who are not in the sex education or sex working space, it was kind of slow, it was long, it wasn't that crazy. The idea of a power dynamic was kind of interesting because perhaps they didn't know it was a kink. But I think a lot of us were expecting a lot more extreme kink in this particular movie. But I guess it depends on what your definition of kink is, because as I listened to what some of the sexperts in my world were talking about, it became a little broader. So the kinks that they talked about, and now, of course, many of us, when we think of kink, we think whips, chains, dungeons, St. James crosses, 50 Shades of Grey. But in fact, the kink here was really a power dynamic between a senior executive, a CEO of a company, a woman, and a younger man. And so what I thought the kink was the power dynamic in that way. But what I'm now understanding from some of my kink experts is that, in fact, that the blackmail was also part of the kink. So because, and I've heard this often, that a lot of people in power like to have a power dynamic exchange as a kink play because they're so in charge of everything all the time that it's something that they just don't want to be in charge. They want someone to tell them what to do. And so that I have heard, this power exchange. The blackmail is really kind of interesting because he keeps threatening her throughout the movie that he's going to expose her, and that becomes part of, in this interpretation, also part of the kink. You've got the affair, which is not uncommon in a long-term marriage, but this time it's the woman who has the affair. So that was one observation. And I would say, some people may find that, it's really bad. She had an affair. And I think unfortunately, it's fairly common. But she also talked about how she had this need inside of her to express herself that she's been trying to suppress. And that brings up another issue, which is that kink can be something that is an orientation. It can be something that you just have wanted to do all your life. It's not something, it may be something you learn later in life that you like, but there are people out there that is their orientation. They want to do things that are not what we in the rest of the world, let's say, and I don't even want to say that because I'm sure there's many more people that practice kink than we know, but the vanilla world would say are kinky. And so the conversation she tries to have with her husband is, she very briefly, she says, there's something wrong with me. I'm having an affair because I'm trying to express my kink. Now, I thought they could have explored that a little deeper to explain, in fact, that being kinky and wanting these kinds of experiences or play, as we call it in that world, could be an orientation as opposed to something that someone just brought into her life. It's something that she's always wanted. And the other thing that was also an observation that I made, because at the end of the movie, her and her husband, after the affair is exposed and he learns about the kink, he then becomes kinky to please her, and their marriage survives. And that part I really like, because I think that in fact, I say it a lot, spicing up your marriage in some way can really bring you back together. And often, if you read Esther Perel's work on infidelity, it can be a catalyst. An affair can be a catalyst for a new relationship. So there are a lot of interesting observations. The other thing I want to address is that at the beginning of the movie, she talks about how she's never had an orgasm with her husband, and she talks about it in bed. Apparently, that's getting a lot of conversations going amongst women. There was an article in the New York Times alluding to it, and about a book that was written on another woman who was married and ended up having an affair with a much younger man. And what I will say is that a lot of women fake orgasms, and that does not help your relationship, because you're teaching in this particular case for 19 years. She was faking it. And she says she's faking it. And then what she would do, she would go in the other room, turn on porn, and have an orgasm when her husband was asleep. And the way that she had that conversation is, as a sex educator, I will tell you, not the way you want to say to your partner that you have not been orgasming. That in fact, both these conversations, the one about her kink and the one about her being dissatisfied in bed, should be had out of the bedroom. So if you're in a situation where you also have been faking your orgasms and you don't know how to tell your partner that sex really has not been that great for you, it's a conversation you want to have out of the bedroom, and perhaps you need the help of a sex therapist to help you have that conversation, to help you explain that you love your partner, you love having sex with them, but it's might work better in a different way. Or as you age too, things change in how you orgasm. So that is another point. So the idea of faking an orgasm, the idea of having an affair, the idea that an affair can spark a kink, can spark something in a relationship, and that you can actually spice it up with something new. The idea that kink can be an orientation. The idea that an older woman and a younger man is okay, regardless of what it was. I thought that was the fact that she indulged him was amazing. I think that we as a society look at men and say it's okay that a man goes for a much younger woman, but when a woman goes for a much younger man, that's not permitted. So those are my observations about the movie. I think it's worth seeing because it's a conversation piece. I don't think it's the finest piece of art. I suspect if Nicole Kidman wasn't the star, they might have explored some of the kink a little more, some of the relationship a little more. I would imagine as a super famous actress that she had certain limitations of what she would expose in her body, et cetera. But overall, probably worth seeing. Maybe you want to wait till it comes out on Netflix or Hulu. But as a sex educator, I think it's a key movie because it brings up all these topics that we need to be talking about.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, follow, and review the podcast wherever you listen. And go ahead and share it with a friend or a partner and make the world a more sex-positive place.